There was a lady who came to my swimming sessions and she was having a real struggle during lockdown. She was quite suicidal, and got her into the water. And fast forward to now, and she's at the lake. She's running her own swim group for her own group of women. She is off her medication. She was overweight before. She's lost weight and she's happier in herself. She's looking after herself. She's connecting more to nature. She's connected back with her family again more. Her life has been breathed back into her. And part of the vehicle for that was the cold.
Gilly McArthur, thank you for joining me. I've been wanting to talk to you because there is a lot on social media lately, especially since Stacey Sims appeared on the Mel Robbins podcast. There's a lot on social media saying cold plunge is bad for women. And I know that your experience has been different. Will you tell me about your experience as a woman and the other women that you have coached through cold plunge?
Sure. So also my inbox has been full to the brim in the last few weeks with lots of women really worried, So I should just start by saying that, I'm a cold water, I'm a lifeguard. I'm a rock climber, and I found cold water immersion through having a bad climbing accident, which I had in Utah. And I started doing cold water swimming in natural bodies of water about 10 years ago. And I didn't know, what I was doing. I swam as a kid. And then I've started to, in the last 10 years, I've now qualified into taking people into cold water. And I've helped thousands of people find water for themselves. Men and women, different ages, genders, body sizes and types. And I love connecting to myself in the cold water. And that's anything from 0 degrees in ice right up to, swimming in water, which is like 22, 23, up to whatever, in the UK. And my experience has always been positive, always, always, always. But the crucial thing in all of this is to start at a place which is right for you. So I think all of these statements that we're seeing on the internet now, which are kind of clickbaity and this is not for us, women shouldn't do this, women shouldn't get into cold bodies of water. It's like, well, what's cold mean? What are we meaning by we shouldn't do this? Does that mean we should never do it? Does that mean we should never turn our showers cold? What's the difference between a cold shower and a cold bath and an ice plunge versus swimming in a natural body of water with different people? And also, what does therapy mean? So I'm having a bit of a struggle at the moment trying to unpick where the reasoning is for all of this, apart from just to scare off a lot of women into knowing what, anecdotally, Hippocrates, way back in 450 BC, was saying cold water is good for us, right through to Dickens going, he quite liked a bit of cold. And somewhere along the way, we've gone, oh, but I need a bit of science to back this up. And it's like, okay, that's great, but there's an N=1 here as well. For my journey into the cold, where I had a big accident, I broke my back in 2 places, broke my ribs, lying on the dust in a Utah desert, to finding the cold to find my peace again, for helping me become more resilient in myself, for helping me find my breath again in my body, for helping me with grief and sadness from some tragedy that happened in my life, and for helping me navigate menopause. It's not a cure-all, but if we can all turn the dial a little bit, then surely that's the way to go. So I have got a problem at the moment with all of this, it's not good for, because I think a lot of the science is just being sort of misread, and you can't really digest something from a 30-second reel. But maybe some people are using it as a excuse to go, well, that's great, I don't need to try that thing. And that's fine. But I've coached thousands of people and spoken to thousands of people, and I've only ever seen it being transformational. Some people start and then go, oh, maybe I need to start at a different point. And it's a bit like running, you know, we're not all going to run an ultra. Some of us might just jog around the block, but we all start at a place which is right for us, for our body types and our minds and our well-being. And that's where I'm at with it. I'm a bit baffled by it all, to be honest. And it's just annoying because it's like, I think there's so much that we don't know about the cold that it would be a shame to turn people away from it, when I just see the power in community, you know, nature connection, the cold. I've got a nice plunge tub in my garden, but I love seeking the ice, you know, up high when it's snowing here. So yeah, I don't know. It's a strange time, you know?
Some of the people in the comments on these social media clips have correctly pointed out that Stacy Sims doesn't say that cold plunge is bad for women. The headlines or the clips leave the viewers with that impression. And if that's what someone in the audience wants to think she's saying, they can sort of twist it around to that. But the fact is, she quotes data on how cold plunge will help resolve endometriosis. It's not data, but she knows that there's a study going on at University of Adelaide investigating whether cold plunge will help women with endometriosis, and it looks promising. You are participating, or you're aware of a study in the United Kingdom using cold water swimming to help lift mood or resolve major depression. And I know there are women enrolled in that. Will you tell me more about that?
Yeah, sure. So about 10 years ago, there was a TV program where they wanted to take people to try and get them off allopathic medicine. And it was one person was asked to see if they could give up their antidepressants to get into the cold. And they were supported on that journey from a safety side by some professors and academics from the University of Portsmouth Extreme Environments Unit.
Mike Tipton and Heather Massey and their colleagues. Yep.
Hannah Denton, you know, Mark Harper. And at the end of that, you know, N equals 1, there was some really amazing, you know, effects. And on the back of that, those researchers thought, well, maybe we could look at this, you know, in a sort of different way. So they did a first phase. I think it was like 87 people. It was a small little group. And there were some really positive results from that. Now, the second phase of it has really shown that there's, in early stages, there is a possibility that depression can be reduced. So what's happening now, we're into randomized control trials, because that's the way that we get the science across. I'm not a scientist, so there are 19 places across England, and it's funded by 2 universities, and it's funded by the NHS here. And it's to see if outdoor swimming can help alleviate depression and anxiety. So we have a control group and we have an intervention group, and basically it's an 8-week course, and it's an hour a week, and people come together, they get into the water, which is cold. You know, I live in the UK, and the water today, I was in the water earlier, it's 7 degrees, you know. Now, some of these people, they're referred by their GP or they're self-referred. And this is just to see if this can help lift their moods and see what effect this water has to them. And it's kind of 3 things. It's being in nature, it's the cold water, and it's the community. So it's a mix of things. And what the universities are doing is pulling this together and going, where's the hook? Is it the community? Is it the cold stuff? Is it that we're just being in a green and blue space? Now, I ran the first trial in Cumbria with another couple of swim coaches up here. And you know what, Thomas? It was amazing. You know, we have people on the first week that are, you know, closed off and not sure. But given the right set of circumstances and the right coaching and the right starting point, at the end of the 8 weeks, all of them had indicated an improvement. They'd started to come out of their shells a bit more. Some of them had reduced their medication. And like I say, it's not a cure-all, but, you know, I think that there's a real bravery in showing up. And we know that by doing hard things become easier. But it is about starting off. Some of the people that we've had the first week, they just stood on the shore, and they were just in this natural body of water. And that's fine. And it doesn't need to be freezing cold. But, some people might want it a bit colder. Body composition makes a difference. Is there a difference between men and women? So I've swum with hundreds of different men, and I know that maybe there's different science around this, but for me, a slim woman versus a larger man, or a larger woman versus a slim man, sleep, hydration, stress, they all play into this mix. So for me, in my own experience, I don't think it's as simple as to say women shouldn't do this thing, because from my experience, it's a really beautiful tool for lots of people. So these trials are continuing. There's more funding which has been pulled down, and all of that research is going to be out next year. But there's a lot that we just don't know yet, But there are some things that we do know, and so we're keying into those and going, okay, let's give this a try. It's cool.
One of the remarkable misconceptions about this generalization, women are more sensitive to cold than men, is that what can be true at the level of a population says nothing at the level of an individual. When 100%. I hear Stacy Sims say, well, women have more subcutaneous fat. I've never met her. I don't know who she is, but I'm looking at her on the podcast. Now, I know I'm 26% body fat. And when I look at Stacy Sims, I'm thinking, who's got more fat, Dr. Sims, me or you? Because she is so lean. What is true of a population is not true of an individual. And so when a message is out there saying women are more sensitive to cold, an individual viewer might think because they're a woman that applies to them. That is a logical fallacy. What really matters is the extent of cold training, the person's prior experience with the cold. It is also true that women, as a population, respond faster to cold training than men do. And so, despite the underlying biological differences between men and women, the increased sensitivity that women feel as a population is more likely due to the fact that they get less cold exposure. If you're a woman who wants to start at a warmer temperature and acclimates, that's great. If you want to start a program of weightlifting, there is no ideal weight or reps or workout that applies to everyone. There's just a place for you to start. And as you train, the ideal challenge for you changes with your state of training. And this is what is getting missed in the popular, millions of followers making these influencers making these generalizations that make no sense for the individuals listening to these things.
100%. And I think that that's where there is nuance in all of this. And I think it's really important to get that across here, is that, if you grew up as a woman playing more outside, if you grew up more attuned to being in nature or leaning into the cold, or, not having a sweater on when it was the depths of winter, when you popped out to the shops or whatever, you're going to have a more ability to grasp the cold versus someone who's sat in an office their whole life. And it's completely different. And like I said, it's a bit like wanting to do an ultra, You're not going to start off by going into the hills, because you're just going to have a miserable time. You're not going to want to do it again. And you're going to tell all your friends that it was a completely crap experience. But
Right.
If you start at a place which is right for you, then it's like, I left feeling good. And it's not a race to the bottom. We don't need to Strava this, We don't need to be like, it's about a time and a distance and a temperature. It's like, what do I need today? I think I'd quite like it to be a bit colder. That's what I need. Or, sometimes I go to the lake and I've got all the way there and I've got my coffee and I'm like, what do I need today? What I need today is to not get in. And that's fine, But this is just, this like, I'm not going to get into that lake because women shouldn't do it. It's just poppycock.
It's preposterous.
Yeah.
It also often comes from either someone with a large following or someone with credentials. And the audience might get confused that because they have scientific or medical credentials in one area, that somehow makes them an expert in another area, which is another fallacy. Or maybe they get confused because someone with a big following has a lot of fans and a lot of social proof. And so someone might think, well, they must know what they're talking about if they have such a large audience. Another fallacy. And so they get a lot of clicks because it's popular to bash ice baths right now, but they don't deliver a lot of knowledge. And that's what's frustrating me.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's also, in my experience, not as a scientist, but as someone who's been in cold water thousands and thousands of times in the last 10 years, in various different temperatures, is that underneath 10 degrees, there are more risks, right? And there definitely are. But the benefits don't need to be that you can get a benefit from just getting that cold shock response. And that cold shock response for some people might be at 22, 23 degrees centigrade. For others, it might be lower. And I think that we just have to be really careful about what we're seeing as being an excuse to not do it. Now, do we always need it to be 0? No.
Of course not.
Sometimes it can be
Right.
10. Sometimes it can be 15. And I think this is where and also where I'm taking people swimming, they're with a coach. We have the safety precautions. And I think that there are risks. But the thing is that these posts aren't talking about the risks. They're just talking about that it's not good for women.
Right.
So if it was about risks, I could be a little bit more aligned with it, because you could stay in longer. You might be doing breath work in the water. That's a bad idea.
Right.
You might have an underlying health condition that you didn't know about, and that's causing you to have a problem in your tub in your garden. But this whole thing about it not being for women, there was a study came out of UCL last year, end of last year, University College London, to do with menopause and menopausal symptoms being improved in anxiety, in low mood, mood swings, hot flushes.
Irritability went down as a result of a cold plunge practice. Heather Massey was on the team that did that work. And one of the things that they discovered when they surveyed over 1,000 British women was that these women reported colder temperatures led to greater benefits. So I'm glad you're bringing up these risks, because they're different. If you're doing open water swimming, if you're going to the beach, it's different than getting in a tub. At the beach, there are all sorts of risks that are not associated necessarily with the cold, but are associated with the risks of swimming. In a tub, many of those risks don't exist. Mike Tipton, his career at University of Portsmouth is most focused on preventing drowning. Now, there are some people who drown in the tub. So one precautionary measure is to never cold plunge unless you're sober. Avoid hyperventilation. It's fine to do box breathing or structured breathing when you're doing your cold, but do not do the hyperventilation that might lead to shallow water blackout and then cause drowning. There is hypertension is a possibility. So high blood pressure. When you get into the cold and you experience the vasoconstriction, all the blood will be pushed into your core. It will raise your blood pressure. If you already have chronically high blood pressure, you want to go at warmer temperatures, or you want to be medically supervised, because there are legitimate risks. I agree with you. To say that cold plunge is bad oversimplifies, and it isn't what Stacy Sims is saying. It's what some other big influencers are saying. People without credentials, people who have never given us any evidence that they've even tried a cold plunge, are saying, well, it causes adrenal fatigue, or you get stuck in fight or flight, or it burns out your thyroid, or whatever this nonsense is. If you don't want to cold plunge, you don't need someone with 1 million followers on Twitter to tell you not to do it. Just don't do it.
Yeah, I know. And I think that's, I think within all of this at the moment, it's just become quite muddied. And as you say, a cold shower is different to a cold bath. A cold bath is different to an ice bath. And all of those are totally different to being outside, and they can all interplay. You know, if I can't get to a body of water and I'm needing a little bit of a sort of a boost, it's like, well, maybe I'll just have a cold shower, you know. But sitting by a body of water in the work that I'm doing can calm our amygdalas down. Our sympathetic response and our parasympathetic response change over time. If we look at what we're doing with our breath when we get into colder water, or water in the UK, which is always pretty cold, and we focus on our breath, we can calm down and be less sympathetically activated.
Correct.
Before we even get into the water. So if we're running in, going, wah, you know, it's like, of course you're going to be more sympathetic. Your heart rate's going to go up before you even get in. Autonomic conflict is also something to just, you know, to highlight, you know, putting your head under the water before you get your breath under control.
Go in feet first.
It's a bad idea.
Yep.
Yeah, put feet in first, you know. There is non-freezing, you know, damage that you can do, freezing cold injuries that you can do to your hands. So when we get into cold water, I always encourage people to maybe wear neoprene gloves and boots because it protects your feet. You still get the benefits, keep your hands out of the water. So there's all these things at play. And for some people, it's, you know what, I'm in my tub and I'm getting my 10 degrees or my 12 degrees, and that's what I do for my 3 minutes. It's like, hey, that's brilliant. But, you know, if you want it to be warmer or cooler, it's like, give it a try. N equals 1. And the one thing, when I'm doing talks and presentations, I think the one question I get asked the most is, when I cold plunge, swim, dip, whatever, why is it that afterwards I get quite tired? And I used to get quite tired because I didn't know what I was doing. And it's like, they get tired because they're staying in too long, you know? It's not anything more than that. It's just like, wind it back down.
It can be exhausting.
Yeah. Totally. And because the cold is a stressor, right? On our bodies, just like getting the underground to London, just like these things are stresses on our bodies. So it's like, what do I need today? Okay. And if you're really having a stressful time, it might be that you don't want to get in. It might be that you do need a warm bath. But this blanket, like, don't do it, women, not ever, is, well, I mean, if it means that there's less people, like, you know, in all my bodies of water that I like to go and swim in, then, you know.
It might be less crowded.
It might be less crowded. But I think that, you know, we can get cold habituated quite quickly. You know, the research is like 6 sessions in about a week, and that can blunt our cold shock response by about 50%. So,
correct.
You know, it's this thing of like, we get in and we can just find our space. We can connect to our breath. And within that, we can then start to feel the joy. And yeah, there's more research that needs doing, but I think it's a real shame for people to just go, I saw it on a 30-second reel from someone who's not qualified at all and who's never had any experience of doing this. I mean, there's whole organisations, there's groups across the globe of women getting into very cold, icy water for menopause, for well-being, for grief. I've got literally hundreds of books in my library that are showing this. So if you haven't tried it, give it a go, but give it a go in a way which feels right for you. You know, community, go to a lifeguarded area, find a cold plunge in your gym, go with people that know what they're doing, do your research, do your own reading, you know, read the papers, listen to the podcasts. But, you know, I don't know.
Is there an experience that a woman under your coaching has had that stands out in particular for you?
You know, there are so many. There are so many. I've taken so many different groups. I work with charities, individuals, charities, corporations, and high net worth individuals. So it's a whole big gamut of things, from, you know, footballers and film stars to charity groups and individual Muslim women wanting to get into it. And I think what was most lovely, just off the top of my head, is there was a lady who came to my swimming sessions that I get. And when I say swimming, we're just dipping. We're not really doing much swimming. There might be a bit of swimming, but sometimes it's just feet on, we're getting submerged, and that's it. and she was having a real struggle during lockdown. She really was having a real struggle. She was quite suicidal, and we got her into the water, and she came to these sessions that we were running. And fast forward to now, and she's at the lake. She's running her own swim group for her own group of women. She is off her medication. She's lost weight. She was overweight before. She's lost weight. And she's happier in herself. She's looking after herself. She's connecting more to nature. She's connected back with her family again more. Her life has been breathed back into her. And part of the vehicle for that was the cold. And these are the anecdotal stories that are globally represented in the cold water world.
It would be tragic.
Yeah, I know. It's just, yeah.
If that woman had seen a video and said, "Oh, I shouldn't do cold because somebody I've never met and never talked to and has no credentials or expertise in this area told me it was bad for me, so I won't do it." Imagine the way her life would be different now if she hadn't had you to experiment with the cold and see if it worked for her.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the comments on a lot of the posts that are coming out, for each one where there's someone that's saying, "Well, that's great, I just don't need to do that, thank you so much, I'm going to have a hot bath," there's probably actually more comments in there that are saying, "I love my cold plunge, but I know that I don't need to do it when I'm in my luteal phase of my periods," or "I know that when I'm a bit stressed, sometimes I just want to not get in the cold." So if you read through it, there's a lot of people that are saying, "I kind of disagree with that because it really helped me through grief. It really helped me to build some resilience back up. It really helped me to balance my moods with my menopause. It made me a better person,
Yep.
And I think that's what we're seeing. And if you read the comments, there's loads of that on there. So I salute those women for not being put off and for sharing their stories, because those are the stories that will help turn the dial for that one person who's reading that going, "I'm scared now." And it's like, well, don't be, it's okay,
Right. I mean, it's scary enough without social media posts running through your head when you're trying to do something difficult.
I know. And this is the thing. It's like our brains in cold water are quite neuroplastic, and we want to be able to enter cold water in whatever variety it is in a calm way and by our own volition. And by doing it by our own volition, it then becomes something that we want to do again. But
no bullying, no coercion, just your own free will, right?
100%.
It's the way to get the most benefit.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Well,
yeah.
Gilly, this has been wonderful. Thank you for weighing in with your vast experience and the stories of other people that you've worked with in your own story, and for listening to me interpret some of the science that is out there. We're going to put this up where people can find it, and maybe it will inspire someone to say, "All right, I'm going to try cold and see if maybe what's true for me and my N=1 experience is different than what I just saw on social media."
Yeah, I think, and I think that's the thing. If people want to know the outside 2 study, it's outside and then the number 2, and that's what's happening in the UK. And, we're not talking freezing cold water, but we're talking like 12, 15, 18 degrees. It's making a difference. The research is still building up, but I think that people shouldn't be put off, and people should just, as you say, N=1 and enjoy it. There's so much joy to be had getting semi-naked with strangers, so all hail that.
Agreed. Thank you, Gilly.
No worries. Thank you. Take care.